Hey everyone, it's Desiree, and I am here with the Simon Says Stamp Card Kit for September 2019. So we are going to make our 5 cards and 1 kit. So this kit had a lot. It was very versatile. The stamp set is absolutely gorgeous. One of my favorites. Why? It's florals. I do love my florals. And this is called Look for the Rainbows. And one of the things that I loved about this stamp set was the one sentiment of somewhere over the rainbow. It brought back just a lot of memories for me. Me and my grandmother every year would watch The Wizard of Oz. So that is just one of our favorite songs. So I really saw that. And then I saw this pattern paper where it was the sky and the clouds. So I simply grabbed my Crayola watercolors, chose the rainbow colors, added some water to them, watered them down, and I just took a paintbrush and created a rainbow that came through onto the pattern paper. Now this is not watercolor paper, remember, this is pattern paper. So I set that aside to dry. I did start heating it first with my heat tool because I am impatient, but then I did just let it sit aside. I'm going to put it in my stamp positioner and I'm going to grab that sentiment and I'm going to set that sentiment right in the center of the rainbow. So you can see this card took no time at all. I did use one of my Simon Says stitched rectangle dies to cut out my pattern paper. And I'm going to use my Versamark ink and I'm going to first prep my pattern paper with my anti-static tool. I am going to stamp this just a couple times. I just always like to make sure that I have a good stamp. I can't say it, so I just make sure I stamp it twice. I've used my Gold Recollections embossing powder, and then I'm just going to prop this onto my standard A2 size card base, which is 4 1/4 by 5 1/2, and it is a top folding. Now the double-sided tape that I'm using is my 2-inch film double-sided tape from Uline, so it is very strong. So it's very unforgiving. So once it just touches the cardstock, it's going to stick. So I tried turning out those corners and seeing if that would work, just to make sure I could try to get it at least somewhat centered. Yeah. I did use my vintage photo, of course, to go around the edge of that panel just to help that stand out, frame it just a little bit. I'm going to add 3 drops of glue. My liquid adhesive I'm using is my art glitter glue. I'm using my wax pencil to pick up some of the crystals that were in the kit, and I'm going to set those in place as well. So that is pretty much card number 1. Very simple, but I think it's my favorite. So for card number 2, again, I'm playing with the pattern paper. I really loved the black and white butterflies. I love butterflies. And then there was a panel within the pattern paper that had this butterfly, the same style, but of course in these colors. Now these colors are bright, but at the same time they're muted. They're not, the super bright colors. So I'm just going to put some foam tape along the wings so that they stay propped up. And then I'm going to stamp my sentiment, Look for the Rainbows. So I'm going to prep. I'm using a piece of scrap black cardstock. Again, I'm going to come in with my VersaFine ink. And then I'm going to use my Ranger Liquid Platinum. It is one of my favorite embossing powders when it comes to the metallics. I'm either a fan of the liquid platinum or I'm a fan of like a brass type of metallic. I'm just going to use my microfiber cloth just to take off some of the powder, and I'm trying to decide, am I going to cut it? See, I had to look at that 3 times, but I wanted to make sure it was going to fit in the corner, and I just wanted to tear the edge. I didn't want a straight edge. With the colors from the butterfly and the splatters that are sitting on the pattern paper, I just felt that tearing of the paper was going to be somewhat cool, give it a different effect. I'm going to glue down the sentiment in the front and then just bend over the two pieces around to the back and glue those down as well. I'm not going to prop that up. Excuse me. And then once they're set, I will look to see how I set the butterfly in place. So I'm going to peel back the release paper and then just put a little bit of glue down the center and then set my butterfly just a little bit above the center of the panel. And then just by putting the double-sided foam tape on the edges of the wings, it just keeps those wings up a little bit once you mail it. I'm going to grab my Arteza Iconic Black. Arteza had sent these to me, and I really like the point of these black markers. You can just buy a pack, I believe it's of 12, just of those black markers, and I use them often. But I was able to use that to add antennas because I did fussy cut that butterfly out. So I did kind of lose those. I was not going to fussy cut around them. No. So what a better way but to just draw them in. But again, you can just buy a pack of the black if you like writing with that style of a marker. So it's just got a nice fine point to it. I'm going to use my liquid adhesive again to set that down onto my standard A2 size card base. And it is again going to be a top folding card base. It is going to cover also the front of my card base. So it is a 4 1/4 by 5 1/2 inch panel. So for our third card, I wanted to play with these awesome 3D embossing folders. Now, what I like to do with my pattern paper or any paper that I put into one of these 3Ds and any embossing folder, I like to just mist it just a couple times. That helps when you run it through your machine with these embossing folders. Again, any embossing folders, whether they're 3D or not, it helps the paper to mold. It won't crack. So just a little bit tip. I got that tip from watching one of the Simon Says videos. So thank you. I grabbed 3 of my oxides because on this paper, there's little marks of pink and yellow and blue. There's like faded marks. I wanted to accentuate those. So I pulled out my worn lipstick, fossilized amber, and the broken china. And I'm just coming in with my blending brushes and just adding a little bit more of that color after it was embossed. So some of it will go down onto the flat areas, some of it will be heavier on the raised areas. So it just gave a little bit of shadows to them. I'm going to trim this panel down to be roughly about 4 1/4 by 5 1/2. Now, what's really going on that very small print of that paper are different ways to say hello. So, welcome, ciao, aloha, all of these different terms. So, I grabbed a piece of scrap paper. I'm thinking there, that's what those fingers tapping there. I just grabbed a piece of scrap paper from my stash, and it's in like a light aqua, so I think it accented what the writing is on the pattern paper. And the sentiment that I chose was simply hello. So I thought it was neat with the pattern paper having so many different ways to say hello, that just having hello on the front I thought was really perfect. So I again am going to stamp that. I'm going to prep my paper with my anti-static, use my Versamark ink, And I am going to use my liquid platinum again for my embossing powder on this. Once that's heat set, it took me forever to cut it. I cannot cut a straight line. It doesn't matter if I use a trimmer, especially if I want it this thin. And I could not find my banner dies. I love my banner sentiment dies. I need to find those. So I'm going to prop this up using some double-sided foam tape, and I'm just going to set that towards the bottom of this panel. And as always, it will be set upon a standard A2 size card base, and it will cover the front of that. So I do see that that's crooked, so I am able to fix that, and then we will be good to go. So something very simple again, but very different. So that's one thing that I really liked the cards from this kit. Very unique, and I think that's because of the pattern paper that came in the kit, along with the style of the stamps that came in this kit as well. I'm going to add a gem in the center of each of the larger of the raised design areas, just to accent those a little bit as well. And that is our third card. So for our fourth card, so gonna do a couple different things here. So grabbed my craft mat. This is by Tonic. I love the size of it. I love that it doesn't move, it doesn't shift, and it's a nice size. I think it's a 12 by 12. So I'm gonna use the stamps. So I was going to do an ink smush background and then stamp on top of it and all of that. So I'm sure somebody else has done this. So I grabbed my oxides. I'm going to stamp on my craft mat because I wanted to be kind of intentional where I put my colors. I wanted to be specific. I wanted to have that control. I'm also bringing in some shabby shutters and aged mahogany. And I started out with worn lipstick. So you can tell, we're not sure what you can tell because my mic died. So I am so sorry. So I'm being specific where I'm stamping my image. What I wanted to do, I was going for a watercolor look on the stamped image, but I didn't know exactly where to put the color. So this is why I'm doing this. So if I'm repeating it, I'm so sorry. I cannot believe my mic died. Anyway, so after I have the light colors down, the shabby shutters and the worn lipstick, I'm coming in with the forest moss and the aged mahogany. I'm going to now spray this. And I'm going to put more water than normal when I ink smush. I'm going to set my paper down. This is Bristol cardstock, and I am specifically putting it off to the side. So in this case, it would be off to the left. I really do like the way that it came out. And again, I'm sure somebody else has done this. First time for me. I just thought it was really neat. You could have just left it like that, used a very faint ink to stamp over this, like either Simon Says Fog or The Barely There, whether it was by Gina K or Simon Says, but it would have had a really beautiful impression. I was kind of going for this boldness. So I started out with one idea. Now I'm going into a second idea. So I'm just going to keep stamping these images just as I did on my craft mat. And I'm not one to mask. So I'm just going to keep my fingers crossed that I can get these positioned where I need them to be so that I have this continuous line that's going through for the flower. And if I don't, trust me, I'm going to be okay with that. This is already a very loose watercolor look that I'm going for. So honestly, I'm okay if some of these images are not connected the way that they should be. If it doesn't look like it's one stamp, I'm good with that. And you should be too. So after I stamp one, I'm going to heat emboss it. I'm going to stamp, heat emboss. So I'm just going to keep on going back and forth. Now, this part of the video, you're not losing your mind, is going a lot faster. I did speed this one up, and I also sped up my last card. I wanted to make sure that you saw all of the steps that I took, all of the different ways that I put this card together. I didn't want to edit those out because it's a different way that I was ink smushing than normal if you've seen my previous videos. So the more that I can show you, the better and the happier we are, right? Right, okay. So once that's all heat set, I'm going to add my 3 leaves. I have them dipping down, and then I have one on the ground. So once they're all heat set, I really liked the way that it looked. You could definitely see the image and the color of the flowers. I definitely had that loose watercolor look that was effortless. I'm going to real quick die cut this using my Simon Says Stitch rectangle again. But I just thought there was something that was missing for me. I guess I didn't have too much of the shading in the green. So I'm going to pull out the Arteza fine liner pens. Arteza had sent these to me just to play with, and this is one of the things that I came up with. So what's interesting is these are water reactive. So that got me thinking. I'm on Bristol paper, and usually when it comes to a marker, whether it's our real brush markers or, you know, any type of watercolor type marker, we do feel, and I find that they work better on Bristol paper. So knowing that I have that, I'm only using these to add a shadow, to add depth. So you can see I'm only putting them in the corner. They're not coming out far. I'm not coming off too far from the aged mahogany. But you can see they are moving. They are moving with water. I am using one of their water brushes. And I'm pretty surprised. So I think there's going to be another video. This piqued my curiosity. But I do really like the way that it looked. I did not lose the watercolor effect that I was going for. I still have that coming from the flower. But I was able to help to let that flower stand out just a little bit more. I only added a little bit of the brown to the center, and then a little bit of the dark green to the leaves. I am going to come in with the brown so that I can ground my stem just to create a mound that it's sitting on. So yeah, they really did pique my curiosity. So stay tuned. I believe there's going to be a video on those. Yes. So when I first started this card, I also had in mind I was going to use the thank you. Now, thinking of you sentiment. Changed my mind. With my leaves dipping down and the one laying on the ground, I chose the sentiment with sympathy. And again, I used my liquid platinum by Ranger to heat set that. Once that was heat set and melted, I did go around this panel with my vintage photo as well. And then I'm going to add just one of the large size gems to the center, just to give that just a little bit of sparkle, but just one. Here I'm using my 2-inch film tape. This did have a lot of warping from all of the water, from the ink smushing that I did, from all of the heat embossing that I did with my heat gun. Yeah, this paper got warped, and it was going to, and I knew that. So this film tape will definitely keep this flat onto my card base. If you're looking for a good double-sided tape, this is it. But please know, it is unforgiving. Once it touches paper, you will tear the paper. So just keep that in mind. So for the last card, we're going to do some more ink smushing. I've pulled in the Shabby Shutters, and I've pulled in the Forest Moss. And I'm just going to use my Bristol paper again. and I'm going to use my heat gun to heat set that in. So again, this is really sped up. I wanted you to see all of the steps that I took. So when it comes to the ink smushing, when you want to have multiple layers, one of the keys is make sure each layer is dried in between and before you go to your next layer. I started out with green. I'm now coming in with pink and red. Usually we will get mud, a brown, when it comes to these colors. As long as you make sure your first layer is dry, and I mean completely dry, and as long as you don't take your cardstock and smush it, like put it down on your craft mat and turn it, you won't get that. As long as you take your cardstock, go down and come straight up again, you're not manipulating that ink, and it should hold its color. It doesn't mean that a little bit may not mix together, because again, oxides are water reactive, but you should have minimal. You can see I have very little as I'm heat setting this third layer that I'm putting on. And what's great is I'm seeing all of my other layers as well, because I'm having more water mixed into these colors as they're moving. But I am going to make sure that this is completely dry. I'm going to clean off my mat, get that out of my way, and I'm going to get ourselves set up for the next idea. I really enjoyed the layering of color that I did in card number 4. So, of course, with all that ink smushing that I did, I'm going to grab one of my Simon Says stitched circles, and I'm going to go right up into the worn lipstick area. Very little green, yes, but that's okay. So once that's die cut, I now have this circle. Of course, I'm going to come in around with my vintage photo just to help frame that just a little bit. I'm going to do some stamping. I'm going to do some heat embossing again, just like I did in the previous card. Of course, I'm going to use the different stamps. I'm going to use the different style flower that's open, and I'm going to use the flower that's leaning down. That's the petals are coming down from the center. So I'm just, again, going to be very sporadic where I'm putting those colors. Excuse me, I'm losing my voice again. Okay. Now, what's good with this is since I'm stamping on top of the oxide inks, and I got a lot of layers going on there, I'm actually able to see the ink this time. So I don't have to stop and go as many times as what I did before. So again, I'm not worried about if I'm perfect with the placement. I just am trying to get as close as I can. I was going to put a stem coming off of the other flower. You know, it can go either way. You know, does the stem come from, you know, is it drooping down? Is it drooping up? You know, which way is it drooping? You can decide. But I decided against that one. So I'll actually add some powder over that just to make that blend into the background. Again, I used my liquid platinum, and then there I am with the powder just to, excuse me, just to smooth that out, to make it go away. So I technically don't have a stem coming off of that one, and I'm okay with that. So instead of using a water reactive medium, whether it's a real brush pen or the fine liner pens or a watercolor pencil, I'm actually going to come in this time with my colored pencils. So I grabbed my 36 pencil set, which is a really nice set if you're looking to start out in colored pencils, and it is very reasonably priced. It's got a great price point, as a matter of fact. So I'm using 2 shades for the flowers. I'm using, it's like a dark fuchsia, and then I'm using ivory, not white. I think because of part of that background, because of the green, I think white would have been too bright as a highlight, but the ivory works just as well. Again, depending upon what your background is. So I'm putting the ivory at the tip or along the edges of each of the petals, and then I'm coming in with that dark pink from the center and pulling that out. I can still, though, see my background, the oxides that I created back there. I'm not losing those, and I didn't want to lose those, to lose that background. I did want that to shine through. I'm using a light and a dark green, and then on the edge, if the edge is still on the panel, I am coming in with the ivory just to add more of a highlight for those 3 leaves that I have. I'll do the same when it comes to the other flower. Again, just coming in from the center and then pulling out and adding the ivory along the top. Not doing, though, so sorry, not doing too much blending, though. I like the stripes from the colored pencil, those lines. It kind of adds a sketchy look to these are technical terms, by the way, a watercolor look, a watery look, or a sketchy look. These are technical terms, yes. So that is our center. Now, I was just going to set this right onto a piece of mirror cardstock that was cut 4 1/4 by 5 1/2. But I did grab a piece of the pattern paper, and I cut that to be 3 by 3 3/4. Glued that directly down onto the mirror cardstock, and I'm going to, or excuse me, I use my double-sided foam tape before putting that down onto the mirrored cardstock. And then I'm going to straddle the circle off of that panel onto the rest of my panel. I will trim the edge off that's overhanging, and then I will add my sentiment to the floral section. This is going to be a standard A2 size card base again. It will be top folding, and as I said, this will cover the entire front of the card base. So this is all that you'll see. I do trim down across the bottom, only because I have a little bit of an overhang, which is fine. Trimming's good. We even everything up that way. And for this card, I do use the sentiment, thinking of you. So we'll get that stamped, and then I'll use my scissors to trim that. And then also, once again, I will use my liquid platinum. You're probably tired of me saying that. My liquid platinum embossing powder. After that's heat set, that's when I'll trim that. And then again, I'm going to set that right in the center, just under that larger flower, so that it can stand out just a little bit. Could have also put it up onto the pattern paper if you did not want to cover up that floral image. I will add some gems to this. I'm going to add them to the mirror and the pattern paper. I did not want to put any up onto the floral area. These gems, again, are by Nuvo. It is their crystals, and they're really nice. You get many different sizes in there. And even though, there was a sample pot that was in our kit for September, you got a lot. So these are the 5 cards that I made from the Simon Says stamp card kit subscription for September of 2019. It is called Look for the Rainbows, so we should always be looking for our rainbows. So I do hope you enjoyed them. They're a little bit different in the way that I saw it, and I think the pattern paper did that for me. So as always, all of the products that I used will be linked down below in the video description, so you either want to hit the arrow to expand or click on show more so that you can see that list and any other information I have there. If you have any questions or comments, just keep on scrolling down. Make sure you leave your comment there, and I'll get back to you as soon as I can. I want to thank you so much for stopping by and just taking the time to watch my video. I hope I inspired you just a little bit when you get your kit. If you haven't already, I'd love for you to subscribe, be part of my group, and make sure you ring the bell so that you know when the next video's up and ready for you to watch. I hope you're having a great day, but always remember what's most important to me. Always be creative.